I found my CEO sitting alone at the bar on Christmas night, drunk and crying into her whiskey. That's the image I'll never forget. The office had been locked when I arrived at 9 that evening, but I remembered the spare key the security guard had given me months ago for emergencies. Forgetting my laptop wasn't exactly an emergency, but I needed those files for a client meeting the following week. The building felt like a tomb without the usual hum of fluorescent lights and keyboard clicks. I grabbed what I needed from my desk and was heading back out when I noticed Murphy's Bar across the street, its neon sign glowing red against the falling snow. One drink. That's what I told myself. Just one drink to avoid going back to my empty apartment where the only sound would be the radiator clanking and my own thoughts getting too loud. The bartender was wiping down glasses when I walked in. A couple sat in the corner booth, their heads close together, whispering. And there at the far end of the bar sat Victoria Hayes. I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who terrified junior analysts in budget meetings, who could dissect a quarterly report with surgical precision, who never showed weakness. She was hunched over an empty glass mascara running in dark streaks down her face. 3 other glasses stood empty beside her current one. My first instinct was to leave, pretend I hadn't seen her, but something in the way her shoulders shook made me stay. The stool scraped against the floor as I sat down 2 seats away. She didn't look up. Her voice came out rough, like she'd been crying for hours. "Who are you, Chum?" "Garrett Brennan, Miss Hayes, from finance." She finally lifted her head and I saw her eyes were red and swollen. Recognition flickered across her face. "Brennan, my best financial analyst." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "Come drink with me." "You're drunk, Miss Hayes." "Very observant. That's why I promoted you 3 times in 3 years." The bartender approached, eyebrows raised in question. I shook my head. Victoria noticed and waved him away. "Everyone went home to families today," she continued, not really looking at me. "Parents, kids, partners. Where did they all go, Brennan?" "I'm here." "Yes, but you're alone too, aren't you? I can tell. It's the way you carry yourself, like you're used to not having anyone waiting." I ordered coffee instead of whiskey. The bartender brought it without comment. Victoria stared into her glass like it held answers. "I don't have a home. I have a $4 million penthouse with white walls and expensive furniture that nobody ever sits on. Do you know what that feels like, to own something so valuable and feel nothing when you walk through the door?" "Why are you here, Miss Hayes?" "Because being there felt worse." She signaled for another whiskey. I caught the bartender's eye and shook my head again. He hesitated, then poured water instead. Victoria didn't seem to notice. "My parents," she said suddenly. "They're dead. Well, my father is dead. My mother, she's dead to me. Has been for 13 years. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was her choice." Victoria's voice hardened. "She gave me an ultimatum when I was 25. Get married to a suitable man from a suitable family or build a company and lose her forever. She didn't think I'd actually choose the company." The bar felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. I sipped my coffee and waited. "I got pregnant that year." Victoria continued her words, tumbling out now like a dam had broken. "Wrong man, wrong time. My mother said I had to choose have an abortion and keep my inheritance or have the baby and be disowned. I chose the baby." She paused, her hand trembling as she reached for her glass. "I lost it at 18 weeks. Miscarriage. Natural causes, the doctor said. My mother called it divine punishment for embarrassing the family." That it was Christmas 2011, the last time I spoke to her. Something in my chest tightened. I knew that kind of loss, just in a different shape. "My mother died of lung cancer in March 2017, I heard myself say. She was a high school math teacher, used to help students after school for free, never turned anyone away. The cancer took her in 6 months." Victoria looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw something shift in her expression. "My father died 2 years later," I continued. "Car accident, September 2019. Some people said he stopped being careful after Mom was gone, like he'd lost his reason to pay attention to the world." "How old were you, Ween?" 28 when Dad died, 26 when I lost Mom. "And you have a brother?" It wasn't a question. "Holden. He was 23 when Dad died, still in his last year at college. I became his guardian. Helped him finish school, then supported him through grad school at MIT. He's getting his PhD in architecture now. Victoria studied my face like she was seeing me for the first time. That's why you work so hard. The extra projects, the late nights, you're supporting him. Was supporting him. He's on fellowship now, but old habits die hard. And you never had time for yourself, for a life outside of work and responsibility. I thought about the women I tried to date over the years. The ones who'd been interested until they learned about Holden, about the student loans I was helping to pay off, about the fact that family dinners meant me and my brother in my cramped apartment, not some picturesque scene with smiling grandparents and cousins. They'd all left eventually, and I couldn't blame them. Responsibility isn't optional, I said. When my brother needed me, I didn't have the luxury of thinking about what I wanted. Victoria's laugh was bitter. And I chose what I wanted and lost everything else. We're both alone, Brennan, just for different reasons. The couple in the corner booth got up to leave, the woman's hand tucked into the man's elbow. They looked happy, the kind of happy that comes from having someone to go home to. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked quietly. The sacrifice? Never. Holden's the best thing in my life. He's designing sustainable bridges now, structures that'll outlast both of us. That matters more than any relationship I might have had. But you're lonely. Every single day. But I keep going, for him, for work, for whatever comes next. Victoria reached for her water glass, this time drained it. That's noble. That's survival. There's a difference. She studied me for a long moment, and I wondered what she saw. A 33-year-old man who'd learned to navigate corporate America without the safety net of an Ivy League MBA, who'd built his career on actual results rather than the right handshakes at the right clubs. Someone who understood numbers the way some people understood music, because I'd taught myself from library books and night classes while working 2 jobs. You know why I promoted you? Victoria's voice was clearer now, the alcohol starting to wear off. Everyone else I interviewed had degrees from Harvard, Wharton, Stanford. They talked a good game about synergy and optimization, and all that business was school garbage. You came in and told me exactly how much the Anderson merger would cost us in real dollars, not projections. You showed me the actual risk in numbers I could verify. I don't trust theory. I trust what I can calculate. In this world, people respect credentials, Victoria said. But I respect capability. And you, Brennan, have real capability. The words settled between us heavier than they should have been. I'd spent 3 years at Apex Technologies proving myself over and over, knowing that one mistake would confirm what people already thought about guys like me, that we didn't belong in their world of corner offices and country clubs. Victoria glanced at her watch, then stood up too quickly. She swayed, grabbed the bar for balance. I should go home. Let me call you a car. I'll walk. The cold will help. I looked out the window at the snow coming down in thick sheets. It's 5 blocks and you're wearing heels. I'm wearing Louboutins because I'm 5'5" and I need every inch to make men respect me in boardrooms. She took a step and stumbled. I caught her elbow, steadied her. Or I could walk you home. Make sure you don't crack your head open on the ice. That's very responsible of you. Someone has to be. She studied my face, and for a moment I thought she'd refuse. Then she nodded. The bartender brought our coats. I left cash on the bar, probably too much, but the guy had been patient with us. Outside, the wind cut through my jacket immediately. Victoria shivered, and I resisted the urge to offer her my coat. She wouldn't accept it anyway. The city felt abandoned. Most people were inside with their families, and the few cars that passed moved slowly through the snow. Christmas lights twinkled in apartment windows, each one a reminder of what we weren't part of. Victoria stumbled on the first block. I caught her waist this time, held her steady until she found her footing. Thanks. These heels are terrible for snow. So why wear them? Because I spent 20 years building a company in a world that didn't want me to succeed. Every inch matters when you're fighting uphill. We kept walking. The snow-muffled sound made everything feel distant and unreal. 2 blocks, 3 blocks. Brennan, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever feel lonely all the time? How do you handle it? I don't handle it. I just keep going, for Holden, for work, for whatever comes next. That's very noble. That's survival. There's a difference, Mom. She stumbled again, and this time I kept my hand on her elbow. She didn't pull away. I haven't had a real conversation in months, Victoria said quietly. Everyone at work is either afraid of me or wants something from me. My so-called friends are business contacts who dropped me the second I wasn't useful. And I realized tonight, sitting in that bar, that I could disappear tomorrow, and the only people who'd notice are the ones who need my signature on their paychecks. That's not true. Isn't it? Be honest, Brennan. Do you like me or do you like your salary? I thought about it. Victoria was intimidating, yes. She'd made grown men cry in budget meetings when they came unprepared. But she was also fair. She paid well. She'd promoted me 3 times based purely on merit, not politics or connections. When my father died, she'd sent flowers to the funeral and given me a week off without asking questions. Both, I admitted. You're tough, but you're good at your cum, and you're fair. That's more than most bosses. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in months. Then you need better friends. I don't have friends. I have business contacts and employees. The Millennium Tower came into view, its glass facade reflecting the Christmas lights from surrounding buildings. A doorman stood inside the lobby watching through the glass. Victoria stopped walking. We were half a block away now, close enough that I could see the marble floors through the entrance. This is me. I know. She turned to face me. Snow had collected in her dark hair, tiny white crystals that melted as I watched. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes still red, but something about her looked different now. Vulnerable in a way I'd never seen at work. Thank you for tonight, for not judging me. Nothing to judge. I'm your boss drunk on Christmas crying about being alone. That's extremely judgeable. You're a person having a hard night. We all have those. She stepped closer. I could smell her perfume mixed with whiskey and winter air. My heart started beating faster. Brennan Garrett, if we're doing this, call me Garrett. Her eyes searched mine, looking for something I wasn't sure I could give. Then she kissed me. It was sudden, unexpected, desperate. She tasted like whiskey and coffee and something that might have been tears. I froze for half a second, my brain trying to catch up with what was happening. Then I kissed her back. Her hands fisted in my coat. Mine found her waist, pulled her closer. The snow fell around us and the city disappeared. And for those few seconds, nothing existed except her mouth on mine and the way my entire body felt like it was waking up from a long sleep. We broke apart, both breathing hard. Victoria's eyes were wide, her lips parted. Come upstairs with me. The words hit like cold water. Reality crashed back in. She was my boss. She was drunk. This was a terrible idea on every possible level. No, she blinked. What? Not tonight. Why not? Because you're upset and you've been drinking. Because tomorrow you'll regret this, and I won't be something you regret. You don't know that. I do know that. I also know that if we do this, it should be when you're sober and sure not when you're crying on Christmas. Victoria stepped back and I immediately felt the loss of her warmth. So you're rejecting me. I'm protecting both of us. That's very responsible of you. I try. So what? Now you walk away and we pretend this never happened. I looked at her, building, then back at her face. She looked lost, like a child who'd asked for something and been told no for the first time. Now I make sure you get inside safely. Then I go home. And then we figure it out tomorrow when you're sober. Victoria's expression shifted, something calculating, entering her eyes even through the alcohol haze. I don't want to go up there. Why not? Because it's empty. Because I'll be alone again. Because this was the first real conversation I've had in months and I don't want it to end. The doorman was watching us now, probably wondering if he should intervene. I made a decision that would change everything. Then don't end it. Come with me. Where? My apartment. We'll make hot chocolate, watch terrible Christmas movies, fall asleep on opposite ends of the couch. Nothing else, just company. She stared at me like I'd suggested we fly to the moon. You want me to come to your apartment? I want you not to be alone tonight. But Victoria, we're doing this right. No mistakes, no regrets tomorrow. You're serious, completely serious. That's either very sweet or very strange. Maybe both. She glanced at her building one more time, then back at me. Something in her face softened. Okay, let's go to your place. We caught a cab heading south. The driver didn't talk, just drove through the empty streets while Victoria stared out the window. I gave him my address, a neighborhood that couldn't have been more different from hers. No doormen here, no marble lobbies, just regular people living regular lives. My building was a walk-up in South Boston, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business but minded their own anyway. 4 flights of stairs, Victoria kicked off her heels on the second floor and carried them the rest of the way. I can't remember the last time I climbed stairs, she said as we reached my floor. Welcome to how the other half lives. My apartment was small bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, barely big enough for one person. Books were stacked everywhere because I'd run out of shelf space years ago. Holden's architecture sketches covered the fridge, held up with magnets I'd collected from nowhere in particular. Victoria walked in slowly, looking around like she'd stepped into a museum. This is nice. It's small. It feels lived in. My place feels like a hospital waiting room. She sat on my couch, secondhand bought off Craigslist when I'd first moved in, and something about seeing her there, this powerful CEO in my shabby apartment, made my chest tight. Hot chocolate, I asked. You were serious about that. My mom's recipe, best thing you'll ever taste. I went to the kitchen and started the process. Real chocolate, not the instant packets. You had to melt the chocolate slowly in warm milk, add a pinch of salt and vanilla. Mom had made it for us every Christmas, and the smell alone brought back memories so vivid they hurt. Victoria appeared in the doorway watching me work. Your mom taught you to cook. Mom taught me everything practical. Dad taught me everything else. Tell me about them. I handed her a mug, the chocolate steaming. She wrapped her hands around it and closed her eyes as she took the first sip. Oh my God, this is incredible. Mom's secret recipe. She'd make this every Christmas. Holden and I would come in from playing in the snow, and she'd have mugs waiting. Dad would pretend he didn't want any, then steal sips from ours when we weren't looking. Victoria's smile was soft, genuine. They sound wonderful. They were good people. Dad worked construction, built half the bridges in the greater Boston area. Mom taught algebra to kids who thought they were too stupid for math. She never gave up on anyone. What happened to your dad? You said it was an accident. I sat down next to her on the couch, keeping a respectful distance. He was driving home from a job site. Someone ran a red light. The other driver walked away. Dad didn't. I'm sorry. Me too, but Holden needed me, so I didn't have time to fall apart. I took on extra projects at work, moved into this place because it was cheaper, made sure my brother had what he needed to finish school. What about what you needed? I needed Holden to be okay. That was enough. Victoria was quiet for a while, just drinking her chocolate and staring at the books piled on my coffee table. Then she said, "You're a good brother." I try. He's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. He's the only family I've got left. What about relationships? Have you dated since your parents died? I shrugged, uncomfortable with the question. Some. Nothing serious. Nothing that lasted. Why not? Hard to date when you're working 60 hours a week and supporting a brother through grad school. Plus, I guess I built walls. Didn't want to lose anyone else. That makes sense. What about you, any relationships? Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. I dated in my 20s. Men who wanted to fix me or change me or make me less ambitious. One guy told me I'd be prettier if I smiled more and stopped talking about work so much. We broke up the next day. His loss. After that, I focused on the company. It was easier to build something than to find someone who accepted what I was building. We talked until the chocolate was gone and the mug sat empty on the table. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the city blanketed in white. Inside, something was shifting between us, something I couldn't name but could feel in every breath. Victoria told me about pitching Apex Technologies to investors, how the first 50 had laughed at her, how she'd gone home and cried, then woken up the next morning and pitched to 50 more. Someone had eventually said yes. That's how you build success, she said. One yes after 100 no's. In this world, people respect credentials, but I respect capability. That's what you told me once when you promoted me the second time. I remember. You just saved us from that merger disaster with TechFlow. Everyone else was focused on the stock price bump. You showed me the hidden liabilities in their pension fund that would have bankrupted us within 3 years. Because I read the actual documents instead of the summary. Because you know how to do the work, not just talk about it. The clock on my wall showed 2 in the morning. Victoria yawned, trying to hide it behind her hand. You should sleep. Guest room is down the hall. I can take the couch. You're not taking the couch, you're the guest. Garrett, I've already imposed enough. You're not imposing. You're accepting help. There's a difference. I got sheets and a pillow from the closet, showed her where everything was. The guest room was barely bigger than a closet itself, but it had a bed and a window, and it was clean. Bathroom's next door. Extra toothbrush in the cabinet. Let me know if you need anything. She stood in the doorway looking smaller somehow, without her heels and her CEO armor. Thank you for tonight, for everything. You're welcome. Garrett. Yeah. I meant what I said earlier, about this being the first real conversation I've had in months. I'm glad you found me at that bar. Me too. Good night. Good night, Victoria. I went to my room but couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the kiss, the way she'd felt in my arms, the vulnerability in her eyes when she'd asked me to come upstairs. I'd done the right thing by saying no, I knew that. But part of me, a part that I didn't want to examine too closely, wondered what would have happened if I'd said yes. My phone buzzed, a text from Holden. Where are you? It's Christmas. I typed back. Home. Long story. Tell you tomorrow. He sent back a question mark but didn't push. Holden knew when to let things go, when to trust that I'd explain when I was ready. I finally fell asleep around 4 in the morning. My last thought before unconsciousness was wondering what Christmas morning would bring. When I woke at 8, winter sunlight was streaming through my window, turning the snow-covered street below into something almost magical. I heard movement in the kitchen, and for a second forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then I remembered. I got up, pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt, and walked out to find Victoria standing at my stove attempting to make coffee. She'd found one of my old Bruin shirts, probably from the drawer I kept extra clothes in for when Holden visited, and was wearing it with her dress pants from last night. Her hair was messy, her face clean of makeup, and she looked nothing like the CEO who terrified people in boardrooms. She looked real. Morning, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Morning, you found the coffee. I'm very resourceful. I can see that. We stood there in my tiny kitchen, both of us suddenly aware that we were alone together in the morning light, that everything from last night had actually happened and wasn't just some alcohol-fueled dream. This is awkward, isn't it? Victoria asked. Little bit. I can't believe I'm here in my accountant's apartment, wearing his shirt the morning after Christmas. Financial analyst, I corrected automatically. And technically nothing happened. I know, but it feels like something happened. Something did happen. We became friends. Is that what we are now, friends? I think so. Do friends usually kiss? Ours did. Fair point. I moved past her to the stove, started pulling out ingredients for breakfast. You hungry? Starving, actually. Good, because I make a mean pancake. Victoria watched me cook sitting at my tiny kitchen table that barely fit 2 people. I mixed the batter from scratch, another one of Mom's recipes, and heated the pan just right. The first pancake always came out wrong, but the second one was perfect golden brown with crispy edges. You cook a lot, Victoria asked. Every day, it's cheaper than eating out and I like it. It's calming. I never learned to cook, never had time. You had time. You just chose work instead. She thought about that. You're right, I chose work over everything else. And now look at me, successful and alone, can't even make pancakes. I could teach you. Really? Sure, consider it a Christmas gift. She smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from her. Best gift I've gotten in years. We ate breakfast together, the silence comfortable now, instead of awkward. She told me about growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, about parents who'd wanted a traditional daughter marriage, kids maybe a part-time job at most, about leaving home at 18 with $200 in a dream. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through business school, she said. Waitressed during the day, bartended at night, did data entry on weekends. I'd sleep 4 hours and do it all again. And built Apex piece by piece, sacrifice by sacrifice. I told myself it would be worth it when I succeeded, that I'd have everything I wanted. But I looked up one day and realized I'd won the game but lost everything else. The success felt hollow because there was nobody to share it with. I poured us both more coffee, thinking about my own choices. I'd sacrificed my 20s for Holden, and I didn't regret it. but I understood what Victoria meant about the period. The difference is I don't regret my choices, I said. I'd do it all again for Holden. I wish I could say the same. I regret everything. The loneliness, the empty penthouse, missing my father's funeral because my mother banned me from attending. Your mother didn't let you go to your own father's funeral. Victoria's face went hard. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. I found out from a lawyer 2 weeks later. Eleanor had already buried him, already settled the estate, or so she thought. What do you mean? My father left a codicil in his will. 40% of the estate goes to me. Eleanor's been hiding it, pretending the money doesn't exist. Her lawyer finally contacted me a few weeks ago with the truth. How much are we talking about? $20 million. I nearly choked on my coffee. Jesus. Eleanor says she'll contest it unless I demonstrate family values and stability. Translation, marry someone she approves of. And you told her no. I told her to go to hell, but she won't give up. She'll keep pushing, keep trying to control my life from a distance. Then we'll deal with her together. Victoria looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in her expression. You keep saying we, like this is your problem too. You're not alone anymore. That's the whole point of last night, isn't it? Nobody should have to face their demons alone. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm from the coffee mug. I meant what I said last night about wanting to be with you. I know it's complicated. I know we work together, that I'm your boss, that this could be a disaster. But I can't pretend I don't feel this. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. What do you feel? Like I want to try. Like I want to see where this goes, even though it's risky and probably stupid. I thought about all the reasons to say no. The company policy against relationships between supervisors and subordinates, the power imbalance, the risk to both our careers, the potential for disaster. Then I thought about the way she'd looked at me in the snow, the vulnerability she'd shown me, the fact that for the first time in years I felt something other than responsibility and exhaustion. I kissed her then, not desperate like the kiss in the snow, but certain, sure. When we pulled apart, she was smiling. So we're doing this, she said. We're doing this. But Victoria, we have to be careful. Nobody at work can know. I know. If one person finds out, this becomes a disaster. We'll be smart about it. She stood up, came around the table, and I pulled her down onto my lap. She fit perfectly, her head tucked under my chin, and we sat there while the morning light filled my apartment and the city woke up outside. I should probably go home soon, she said eventually. Change clothes. Try to look like I didn't spend the night. Probably. But neither of us moved. We stayed there holding each other, and I thought about how 24 hours ago I'd been planning a quiet Christmas alone. How I'd had no idea that walking into that bar would change everything. Victoria's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her expression darkened. What is it? Email from my mother's lawyer. She's not giving up on the inheritance fight. What does it say? Victoria read aloud. Eleanor Hayes requests a meeting to discuss reconciliation and family matters. She believes a face-to-face conversation would be beneficial for all parties. Are you going to meet her? Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell, but another part, she trailed off, another part wants to show her what you've built, who you've become. Exactly, is that petty? It's human. She was quiet for a moment. Then, would you come with me if I meet her? You don't have to decide now. But would you? I thought about meeting Eleanor Hayes, about sitting across a table from a woman who disowned her own daughter for choosing ambition over tradition. About the judgment that would come when she realized I was the man her daughter was, with no Ivy League pedigree, no trust fund, no country club membership. Yes, I'd come with you. Victoria kissed me again, soft and grateful. Thank you. But not today. Today we figure out what this is. Tomorrow, we can worry about your mother. Deal. We spent the rest of the morning on my couch talking about everything and nothing. She told me about the first time she'd presented to venture capitalists, how her hands had shaken so badly she'd dropped her notes. About the investor who'd asked if she had a husband to help her with the numbers. I told her about the first time I'd presented financial analysis to the executive team at my previous job, how I'd spotted an error in their projections and been told to keep quiet because correcting the CFO would be career suicide. How I'd done it anyway because being right mattered more than being liked. That's why I hired you, Victoria said. Your old boss called me before I made the offer. Warned me you were difficult, that you didn't play politics well, and you hired me anyway. I hired you because of that. I don't need people who play politics. I need people who tell me the truth. Around noon, Victoria finally got up to leave. She borrowed my phone to call a car, changed back into her dress from the night before. With her makeup gone and her hair still messy, she looked younger, less guarded. I'll see you Monday, she asked at the door. Monday, back to normal. Whatever normal means now. I watched her walk down the stairs, heard the car pull up outside. Then she was gone, and my apartment felt emptier than it ever had before. I spent the rest of Saturday cleaning, doing laundry, trying to process what had happened. Holden called around 3. So Christmas, what happened? I ran into my boss at a bar. We talked. Your boss, the scary CEO you have been working for, she's not that scary once you get to know her. Garrett, please tell me you didn't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Please tell me you didn't sleep with your boss. I didn't sleep with my boss. But something happened and something happened. Holden was quiet for a long moment. Are you okay? Yeah, I think I am. Good, because you deserve to be happy, you know. After everything you've done for me, you deserve something for yourself. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and thought about Victoria's question from the night before. Did I ever feel lonely every single day? But maybe that was about to change. Monday morning arrived with the sharp clarity of a New England winter. The office buzzed with post-holiday energy, people comparing vacation stories and showing off gifts. I kept my head down, reviewed the M&A analysis for the Stratford deal, and waited for 1 o'clock. The elevator doors opened precisely at 12:58. Victoria stepped out in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her expression revealing nothing. Our eyes met for half a second before she turned toward her office. Good morning, Mr. Brennan. Morning, Miss Hayes. The words tasted formal and wrong after everything that had happened over the weekend, but this was the game we'd agreed to play. By 12:59, I was gathering my coat. By 1 o'clock, I was walking out the side entrance, taking a different route than usual. The cafe was 2 blocks south, a place called Rosie's that served mediocre coffee and excellent anonymity. Victoria arrived 3 minutes after me, sliding into the booth across from mine like we'd planned this by accident. This is insane, she said quietly, completely insane. But we both smiled, and for the next hour we talked about everything except work. She told me about spending Sunday reorganizing her entire penthouse, throwing out furniture she'd never liked, but had been too busy to replace. I told her about Holden's latest project, a bridge design that incorporated solar panels into the support structure. When we left, we took separate exits. I went back through the loading dock entrance. She walked in the front door 10 minutes later, her assistant, Christine, handing her messages without looking up. This became our pattern. Every weekday at 1 o'clock, we disappeared to different cafes, different restaurants, different coffee shops. We never went to the same place twice in 1 week. We never arrived or left together. At the office, we were professional to the point of coldness. But 3 nights a week, sometimes 4, Victoria would show up at my apartment after 9, when my neighbors had mostly settled in for the evening. She'd bring takeout or I'd cook, and we'd eat sitting on my couch while she told me about board meetings and investor calls, and I told her about the real numbers behind the company's quarterly projections. The first time we slept together was a Tuesday night in mid-January. She'd had a brutal day, some venture capital firm trying to lowball her on a valuation, and showed up at my door looking exhausted. We'd meant to just watch a movie, but halfway through, she'd turned to me, and the rest just happened, natural as breathing. Afterwards, she lay with her head on my chest, tracing patterns on my skin with one by finger. I haven't felt safe with anyone in 13 years. I kissed the top of her head, didn't trust myself to speak. When I lost the baby, when my mother said those things, I decided I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. I built walls so high I couldn't even see over them. And now I'm terrified because you could destroy me, Garrett. You could break me in ways my mother never could. I won't. You don't know that. I do, because family isn't about blood. It's about who stays when everything goes to hell. She lifted her head to look at me, her eyes searching mine. Then she kissed me soft and deep, and I felt something shift between us, some final barrier falling away. By the end of January, I knew I loved her. I just didn't know how to say it. Christine started watching us in the second week. I noticed her standing outside the conference room one afternoon, her gaze following Victoria as she passed. Later that week, she stopped me in the hallway. "Mr. Brennan, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you and Miss Hayes close?" The question landed like a punch. I kept my expression neutral. "We work together. That's all. It's just that I've noticed you both take lunch at the same time every day. Same pattern, same hour. Lots of people take lunch at 1. Christine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, I'm probably imagining things. But she kept watching. I'd catch her in the break room when Victoria was there or lingering near my desk when there was no reason for her to be on our floor. She started taking lunch at different times like she was tracking our movements. That night, I told Victoria about the conversation. We were at my apartment, Chinese food containers spread across the coffee table. Christine's always been jealous. She wanted your position when it opened up last year. You got it instead. So she's looking for reasons to cause problems. Exactly, we need to be more careful. We changed our coffee schedule, varied the times, went to places farther from the office. We texted each other using a code we'd developed. She was VH in my phone, I was GB in hers, and our messages looked like work correspondence to anyone who might glance at our screens. But the paranoia wore on us, the constant vigilance, the checking over shoulders, the careful distance we maintained at work, even when I wanted nothing more than to touch her hand or make her laugh. We were living two lives, and the gap between them was exhausting. The last Friday in January, we stayed late at the office working on the quarterly earnings presentation. Everyone else had gone home. The floor was dark except for the lights in the conference room where we'd spread out financial reports and projections. Victoria closed the door, then crossed the room and kissed me against the wall. I hate this. Hiding what we have like it's shameful. It's not shameful. It's just complicated. I built this company from nothing. I should be able to date whoever I want. You're the CEO. Different rules apply. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, but we can make this work if we're patient. She pulled back to look at me, her hand still fisted in my shirt. How long do we have to hide? I don't know. Maybe forever. That's not acceptable. Then what do you want to do? Go public. Deal with whatever happens. We could both lose our jobs. Maybe that's worth it. But we both knew it wasn't that simple. Victoria had spent 20 years building Apex. I had Holden's remaining tuition to consider bills to pay a career I'd worked too hard to throw away on impulse. Let's not make decisions when we're frustrated, I said carefully. Let's think about this. She stepped back, ran her hands through her hair. You're right. I know you're right. I'm just tired. Tired of what? Pretending, sneaking around, acting like you're just another employee when you're the person I love most. The words hung between us, electric and terrifying. We'd never said it before, had been dancing around it for weeks. You love me. Since that morning when you made me pancakes and laughed at my terrible attempt to flip one. Since you fell asleep on my couch with your hand in mine. Since you looked at me like I was worth choosing. My chest felt too tight, like my ribs couldn't contain what I was feeling. I love you too. Have for weeks, just didn't know how to say it. This time when we kissed, it felt different, deeper, like we'd crossed some invisible line and there was no going back. We left the office separately that night, but she came to my apartment an hour later, and we stayed up until 3 in the morning talking about the future, about what we wanted, about whether love was worth the risk of losing everything else. The answer we decided was yes. Tuesday morning, the first week of February, started like any other. I woke at 6:30, showered, made coffee. Victoria had left around 5 to get home and change before work. My apartment still smelled like her perfume. I was making breakfast when someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Holden backpack slung over one shoulder, grinning like he'd just pulled off the world's greatest surprise. I opened the door. What are you doing here? Drove down from Cambridge. Wanted to see my big brother, that a crime. You could have called. Where's the fun in that? He walked in, dumped his bag on the floor, and headed straight for the kitchen. That's when he stopped his eyes landing on the coffee table where 2 mugs sat, one with lipstick on the rim. Then he noticed the women's coat draped over the back of the couch. Garrett, I didn't answer fast enough. He turned toward the hallway just as my bedroom door opened, and Victoria emerged wearing one of my old MIT shirts and nothing else, her hair wet from the shower. We all froze. Victoria's eyes went wide. Holden's mouth fell open. I felt my stomach drop to my feet. Holden, this is Victoria Hayes, my boss. Holden found his voice first. Your boss, the boss you've worked for 3 years, yes. And she's in your apartment at 7 in the morning wearing your clothes because Victoria grabbed her dress from where it was folded on the chair. I should go. No, I stepped between them. Stay. Holden, sit down. We need to talk about this. My brother sat, but he looked angry in a way I hadn't seen since Dad died. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what could happen if this goes wrong? I know the risks. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're dating your boss, the person who controls your paycheck, your career, your future. What happens when this ends badly? It won't. Every relationship thinks that, Garrett. Every single one. Victoria had pulled on her dress now, was looking for her shoes. Her face had gone pale, that CEO mask sliding back into place. He's right to be concerned. This is complicated and could destroy both our careers. Then why are you doing it? Holden stood up, his voice rising. Why are you putting my brother at risk? Because I love him, more than I've loved anyone. The room went quiet. Holden stared at her, then at me, then back at her. You're serious, both of you. Completely serious, I said. Look, I know this looks reckless. I know you're worried. But Holden, I spent 5 years taking care of you, making sure you had everything you needed. I don't regret a second of it. But now I need to take care of myself. And Victoria makes me feel alive for the first time since Mom and Dad died. My brother's expression softened slightly. This could blow up in your face. I know. You could lose your job, get blacklisted from the industry. I know that too. And you're willing to risk everything. For her, yes. Holden looked at Victoria, really looked at her. You feel the same way. I would never use my position to hurt him. And if this becomes a problem at work, I'll be the one who steps down, not him. That's not going to happen, I said. We don't know what's going to happen, Victoria replied. But I can promise you this, Holden. I care about your brother more than I care about Apex Technologies, more than I care about my reputation or my career. That's terrifying for me because I've spent my whole life proving I could succeed on my own, but the truth is I don't want to be on my own anymore. Holden sat back down, scrubbed his hands over his face. You're both crazy. Probably. But Garrett, I haven't seen you this happy since before Mom got sick. You're different. Lighter somehow. That's what she does to me. My brother sighed long and heavy. Okay, I'll support this. But you need to be careful. Nobody at work can know. We're being careful. Are you? Because I just walked in and found her here? How many other people could do the same thing? Nobody else has a key, I pointed out. I'm changing my locks anyway, I added. Holden stood, grabbed his backpack. I'm going to get coffee. Give you two some privacy to figure this out. But Garrett, seriously, be smart about this. After he left, Victoria and I stood in my kitchen, the morning sunlight cutting harsh angles across the floor. He's right to worry. He worries about everything. It's his default setting. No, he's right. We're taking huge risks. And if one person finds out, if Christine or anyone else connects the dots, I pulled her close, felt her heartbeat against mine. Then we deal with it. Together. She left 20 minutes later, taking a different route than Holden. I spent the rest of the morning with my brother, who grilled me about the relationship with the kind of thoroughness he usually reserved for his engineering calculations. By the time he left, I think he was cautiously optimistic, or at least resigned to the fact that I was going to do this whether he approved or not. That afternoon at work, everything felt different, heavier. Christine's eyes followed me as I walked to the break room. I caught two analysts whispering when I passed their desks. Paranoia, probably, but it made my skin crawl anyway. Thursday, February 13th. I remember the date because it was the day everything started to unravel. Victoria was presenting the Q4 results to the board, walking them through revenue projections and market expansion plans. I was in my office working on the Stratford analysis when I heard her assistant's voice carry down the hallway. Miss Hayes, you have a call on line 1. The caller says she's your mother. The entire floor went silent. Everyone knew Victoria's parents were dead. She'd said as much in interviews at company events, in casual conversations over the years. I stood up, moved toward the conference room, saw through the glass walls as Victoria went rigid. "I'll take it in my office." The board members filed out, confused and murmuring. I stayed at my desk, watching through the windows as Victoria paced her office phone pressed to her ear. 10 minutes later, she emerged, her face ashen. "Meeting adjourned. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Everyone out except Mr. Brennan." The board members exchanged glances, but left. When the door closed behind them, Victoria's composure cracked. "My mother saw a picture of us. Someone from her social circle was at that cafe on Newberry Street last week. She took a photo, sent it to Eleanor, asking if I was finally dating someone appropriate. What did she say? That she wants to meet you, to assess whether you're suitable for the Hayes family." I almost laughed. "You told her no." "I told her to go to hell. But Garrett, she won't stop. She'll dig into your background, into the company, into everything. If she finds out we're together and that you work for me, she'll use it. She'll find a way to make this a problem. Let her try." "You don't understand. Eleanor has connections everywhere. Society, people, lawyers, investors. If she wants to cause trouble, she can." That evening, Victoria got an email from Eleanor's lawyer. She showed me the message on her phone, her hand shaking slightly. "Eleanor Hayes requests a meeting to discuss reconciliation and family matters. She believes a face-to-face conversation would be beneficial for all parties. The codicil to William Hayes's will remains in dispute. A resolution would be in everyone's best interest. She's using the inheritance as leverage." "Of course she is. It's all she has left." "Are you going to meet her?" Victoria stared at her phone for a long moment. Part of me wants to refuse, to let her stew in her own bitterness. But another part wants her to see what you've built, who you've become. Is that petty? It's human, and maybe it's time to face her, show her you don't need her approval or her money. "Will you come with me?" The question carried weight. Meeting Eleanor meant stepping into Victoria's world, fully declaring ourselves publicly to at least one person who mattered. It meant crossing a line we couldn't uncross. "Yes, I'll come with you." She booked a table at L'Espalier for the following Friday evening. 7 o'clock, neutral territory, public enough that Eleanor couldn't make a scene, but private enough for real conversation. The week leading up to the dinner crawled by. Victoria was tense, snapping at people in meetings, working late into the night on projects that didn't need immediate attention. I found her in her office Wednesday evening, staring at a photo on her phone, a young Victoria with her father. Both of them smiling in front of some mansion in Connecticut. I was 23 there, right before I told them I was starting Apex. Dad said he was proud of me. Mom said I was throwing my life away. Your dad would still be proud. Maybe, or maybe he'd be disappointed I let the family fracture like this. You didn't let anything fracture. Eleanor made her choice when she gave you that ultimatum. Friday arrived too quickly. I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought for Dad's funeral and rarely wore since. Victoria picked me up at 6:30, driving herself in a Mercedes that probably cost more than I'd make in 2 years. We didn't talk much during the drive, both of us lost in our own thoughts. L'Espalier occupied a renovated brownstone in the back bay, the kind of place where the menu had no prices and the sommelier wore a suit nicer than mine. The host recognized Victoria, immediately led us to a private table in the back corner. Eleanor was already seated. She looked exactly like Victoria would in 25 years. Same bone structure, same sharp eyes, same air of unshakable confidence. She wore a Chanel suit in navy blue pearls at her throat, her silver hair styled in a way that probably required weekly salon appointments. "Victoria, you're late." "We're 5 minutes early, Mother." Eleanor's gaze shifted to me, evaluating and dismissing in the same glance. "So you're the accountant." "Financial analyst, Garrett Brennan." "Mr. Brennan, how practical." She gestured to the chairs. "Please sit. I've already ordered wine." The bottle on the table was probably worth more than my monthly rent. Eleanor poured without asking if we wanted any, her movements precise and controlled. "So, Mr. Brennan, tell me about yourself, your family, your background." I met her eyes steadily. "My parents passed away in 2017 and 2019. My father was a civil engineer. My mother taught mathematics at a public high school." "I see, and I understand you have a brother in graduate school." He's completing his PhD in architecture at MIT. On scholarship, I assume. The condescension dripped from every word. I felt Victoria tense beside me, but I kept my voice even. Holden earned a full fellowship based on his research into sustainable infrastructure design. His work on integrating renewable energy into bridge structures has been published in several academic journals. How admirable, Eleanor sipped her wine. And you work for my daughter. I'm a senior financial analyst at Apex Technologies, yes. For how long? 3 years. Eleanor's smile was razor thin. And in those 3 years, Victoria has promoted you how many times? The trap was obvious. I glanced at Victoria, who looked ready to explode. 3 times. Based on performance reviews, peer evaluations, and quantifiable results. I can provide documentation if you'd like. That won't be necessary. I'm sure the promotions were entirely merit-based. Victoria set down her wine glass hard enough that it rang against the table. Let's be clear about something, Mother. I didn't come here for your approval of my relationship or my business decisions. Then why did you come? To tell you that I'm happy. For the first time in 13 years, I wake up happy because of Garrett. Eleanor's expression didn't change. Happiness doesn't pay the bills, Victoria. That inheritance your father left you, keep it. The words fell like stones. Eleanor blinked the first crack in her composure. Excuse me. Keep the $20 million. I don't need father's money. I built a company worth $180 million from nothing. You can't buy me anymore, Mother. That power died when you gave me that ultimatum 13 years ago. You're making a mistake. This man is beneath you. Victoria stood up and I stood with her. Her voice was steel. Garrett is kind. He's present. He's real. He doesn't care about my title or my bank account. He cares about me. That's worth more than any inheritance, more than any society connections, more than anything you could possibly offer. Eleanor's mask finally slipped, revealing something that might have been hurt beneath the anger. I raised you better than this. You didn't raise me at all. You tried to mold me into someone I wasn't, and when I refused, you abandoned me. That wasn't raising a daughter. That was training a show dog. Victoria, we're leaving. Thank you for dinner. We walked out with Eleanor still sitting at the table, her perfectly composed world shaken for maybe the first time in decades. In the car, Victoria's hands were trembling so hard she couldn't get the key in the ignition. I took them from her, drove us back to my apartment. Inside, she paced like a caged animal, her breath coming in short gasps. I just gave up $20 million. You gave up a chain. There's a difference. What if she tries to cause problems at work? She knows people on the board, people in the investor community. I caught her hands, made her look at me. Then we deal with it. Together. But Victoria, I'm proud of you. What you did tonight took courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. She kissed me, then desperate and fierce, and we ended up on my couch, tangled together until the adrenaline faded and exhaustion took over. She fell asleep with her head on my chest, her breathing finally even. I stayed awake thinking about Eleanor's words. This man is beneath you. The thing was part of me agreed with her. Not about being beneath Victoria as a person, but about the gap between our worlds. I'd spent 3 years at Apex proving I belonged despite coming from nothing. One exposure of our relationship and all that work could evaporate. People would say I'd slept my way to promotions, that Victoria had shown favoritism, that neither of us could be trusted. The risk we were taking was massive, and it was only a matter of time before someone found out. That someone turned out to be Christine. The first week of March, Victoria and I had been together for 2 months, 8 weeks of stolen moments and careful distance at work. We thought we'd been smart. We varied our schedules, changed our routines, never texted anything incriminating. But Christine had been watching, waiting, gathering evidence. Friday afternoon, March 7th, I got an email from HR. Subject line: mandatory meeting. The message was brief. Monday, March 10, 8:00 a.m. Re-policy violation. Attendance required. No details, no explanation. I forwarded it to Victoria's personal email. She called me 2 minutes later from a blocked number. I got the same message. What do you think it is? I think Christine finally found what she was looking for. That weekend crawled by in slow motion. Sunday evening, Victoria received an anonymous email with attachments. She came to my apartment, shaking her phone clutched in her hand. The attachments were photos. Some were real us at the cafe on Newbury Street, holding hands across the table. Us walking too close on a side street near my apartment. Us sitting in her car in the parking garage, her hand on my cheek. But some were fake, doctored. Images that showed us in her office, kissing against her desk, her shirt unbuttoned. Another showed us in what was supposed to be the conference room, my hands on her waist. These are fake. We've never not at work. Never. Victoria was staring at the images, her face white. I know they're fake. You know they're fake. But will HR know? Will the board? We can prove it. Look at the metadata, the timestamps. These office photos are supposedly from days when I was traveling for the Stratford deal. I have plane tickets, hotel receipts, meeting notes. That's not the point. The point is someone went to the trouble of creating fake evidence. Christine wants me gone, Garrett. This isn't just about us dating. This is about corporate espionage. What do you mean? Christine's been after a VP position for years. She applied for CFO last year and was rejected. If she can create enough scandal to force me out, the board might appoint an interim CEO. And if that happens, someone could launch a takeover. Exactly. I need to access her emails, use my admin privileges. She pulled out her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. 5 minutes later, her suspicions were confirmed. Christine had been communicating with Tech Venture Capital, one of our main competitors, about internal company information. Emails discussing our upcoming IPO plans, our revenue projections, our investor relationships. The plan was clear: create a scandal around Victoria and me, force us both out, destabilize the company, and open the door for Tech Venture to launch a hostile takeover. Christine would get a VP position in the new regime, plus a $500,000 bonus. We need to show this to the board. Monday morning, during that meeting, we hit her with everything. But Sunday night, lying in my bed with Victoria curled against me, I couldn't shake the feeling that Monday would change everything. That even if we exposed Christine's scheme, even if we proved the photos were fake, the relationship itself was real. And company policy was clear: no relationships between supervisors and subordinates. One of us would have to go. Victoria, if it comes down to it, if the board makes us choose, you can't sacrifice Apex. You've built this company from nothing, and you've sacrificed enough for other people. I'm not letting you give up your career for me. Then what do we do? She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, but Garrett, whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know something. What? I love you, and I'll fight for this. For us. I kissed the top of her head, breathed in her scent, tried to memorize the weight of her in my arms. I love you too. We'll figure it out. But neither of us slept that night. We lay there in the dark, listening to the city outside my window, waiting for Monday morning to come, and knowing that when it did, everything would change. At 6 a.m., Victoria got up to leave. She needed to go home, change, prepare for what was coming. At my door, she turned back. No matter what happens in that meeting, remember that I chose this. I chose you. That's not something I regret. Even if it cost you everything. Even then. After she left, I sat in my apartment and thought about the past 2 months, about falling in love with someone I'd never expected to understand me, about finding connection in the last place I'd thought to look, about the risk we'd taken and the price we might have to pay. My phone buzzed, a text from Holden. Good luck tomorrow. You've got this. I typed back, thanks, might need more than luck. You've got each other. That counts for more. Monday morning loomed like a storm on the horizon. I put on my best suit, checked the documents I'd need to prove the photos were fake, and headed to the office early. The building was quiet, most people not arriving until 8:30 or 9. Victoria was already in the conference room when I arrived at 7:45. So was the entire board, the HR director, the company lawyer, and Christine sitting at the far end of the table with a folder in front of her. I took the only empty seat across from Christine. She smiled at me, cold and victorious. The board chairman, Robert Thornton, cleared his throat. Thank you both for coming. We've received some serious allegations that need to be addressed. Christine opened her folder, pulling out copies of the photos. I've been documenting a pattern of inappropriate behavior between Miss Hayes and Mr. Brennan. As you can see from these images, they've been conducting a romantic relationship while maintaining a supervisor-subordinate professional relationship. This constitutes a clear violation of company policy and raises serious questions about favoritism and professional judgment. The board members passed the photos around, their expressions ranging from shocked to disapproving. Victoria sat perfectly still, her CEO mask firmly in place. Robert looked at her. "Miss Hayes, is this true? Are you in a romantic relationship with Mr. Brennan?" "The relationship is real. The favoritism allegations are false. Garrett has earned every promotion through documented merit. That doesn't address the policy violation. Company handbook explicitly prohibits romantic relationships between supervisors and direct reports." I stood up, pulling out my laptop. "Some of these photos are fake. The ones supposedly taken in the office, look at the metadata. They're dated December 15th and 23rd. I was in Chicago on business both those days. I have flight records, hotel bills, meeting minutes with timestamps." The HR director took my laptop, examined the evidence. Her eyebrows rose. "He's right. These timestamps don't match. Miss Lawson, where did you obtain these photos?" Christine's confidence flickered. I received them from a source. Perhaps they made a mistake about the dates." "You didn't receive them from a source," Victoria cut in. "You created them. You doctored photos to make our relationship look worse than it is. And you did it as part of a larger scheme." She produced her own laptop, turned it so the board could see the screen. Christine's emails to Tech Venture Capital filled the display, laying out the entire plot in damning detail. Robert's face went dark red. "Miss Lawson, did you share confidential company information with a competitor?" "I was trying to protect the company." "You were trying to orchestrate a hostile takeover for personal gain." "Security, please escort Miss Lawson from the building." Christine stood, her composure finally cracking. She looked at Victoria with pure hatred. "You don't deserve any of this. You chose a company over your own child, over your family. You're cold and heartless, and you'll die alone." "That's enough." I was on my feet, moving between them. "Security, please." Two guards appeared, took Christine by the arms. She kept shouting as they pulled her toward the door, her voice echoing down the hallway until it finally faded. The conference room fell silent. Robert cleared his throat. "Miss Hayes, while the evidence may have been fabricated, the underlying relationship is still real. That's still a policy violation. We need to discuss next steps." And that's when I knew. One way or another, this was about to cost us everything. Robert Thornton folded his hands on the conference table, his expression grave. The other board members leaned back in their chairs, waiting for someone to speak first. "Miss Hayes, you own 35% of Apex Technologies. The remaining 65% is held by institutional investors who have very specific stipulations about corporate governance." He paused, letting the weight settle. "The IPO is scheduled for 18 months from now. We cannot afford this kind of scandal." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I'm the founder. I built this company. Which is why we're having this conversation instead of simply terminating both of you. But the policy exists for a reason. Relationships between supervisors and subordinates create liability, perception problems, and legal exposure." The company lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, flipped through papers in front of her. "We have three options. 1, Miss Hayes ends the relationship. Mr. Brennan remains employed. 2, Mr. Brennan resigns. Miss Hayes continues as CEO. The relationship continues outside the company. 3, both parties remain employed. The relationship terminates." I felt Victoria start to speak and knew what she'd say, that she'd step down, that Apex wasn't worth losing us. Before she could destroy everything she'd built, I stood. "I'll resign." "Garrett, no. Miss Hayes, you've spent 20 years building this company. I won't let you throw it away for me." Robert's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Brennan, do you understand this means leaving Apex Technologies permanently? No severance package beyond your accrued vacation time." "I understand." Victoria grabbed my wrist, her fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. "Absolutely not. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." I looked at her, tried to pour everything I felt into that look. "You know there isn't. If you step down, you lose everything. If I leave, I find another job. The math isn't complicated. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair, but we can survive this." Patricia cleared her throat. We'll need your resignation letter by end of business today. 2 weeks notice, standard procedure. You'll have it in an hour. The board members exchanged glances, relieved to have the problem solved so neatly. Victoria looked like she might be sick. I squeezed her hand once, then let go and walked out of the conference room before I could change my mind. My office had never felt smaller. I sat at my desk and stared at the financial models on my screen. The Stratford deal analysis I'd spent 3 months perfecting, projections that would save Apex millions in unnecessary acquisitions costs. Someone else would present them to the board now. Someone else would get credit for the work. The resignation letter took 10 minutes to write. I kept it professional, thanked them for the opportunity, didn't mention Victoria at all. Sent it to HR and Patricia copied Robert. My inbox pinged with an automated reply acknowledging receipt. 3 years and 2 cardboard boxes. That's what my career at Apex amounted to. Files awards the coffee mug Holden had given me last Christmas with "World's Most Boring Brother" printed on the side. Personal effects collected, desk cleared, computer password changed, and logged with IT. People stared as I carried my boxes to the elevator. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked curious, hungry for gossip. I kept my eyes forward and my face blank until the elevator doors closed. Victoria stood in her office doorway as I passed. Our eyes met for 3 seconds. She looked destroyed, and I hated that I was the cause. Then the elevator dinged, and I stepped inside, and the doors closed between us. That night, she came to my apartment, and we didn't talk, just held each other while the city lights flickered through my window. She stayed until dawn, both of us knowing sleep wouldn't come. "This is wrong. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your career." "I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm making a choice." "Between what and what?" "Between a job and you." "That's not even a choice, Victoria. It's obvious." She pulled back to look at me, her eyes red. "What if you can't find another position? What if this follows you? Then I'll figure something else out. I always do." But the fear in her voice matched the fear in my chest. The finance world was small, interconnected. Word would spread about why I'd left Apex. People would assume the worst. They always did. The first 2 weeks were a grace period. I came into the office, transferred projects to other analysts, documented my processes. Victoria avoided me entirely during business hours, communicating only through terse emails about handoff procedures. At night, she'd show up at my apartment looking hollowed out, like the guilt was eating her from the inside. I could still step down, tell the board I'm transitioning to an advisory role, and throw away 2 decades of work. No. Then what's the plan? You leave, we pretend to wait a respectable amount of time. Then what? How do we explain dating after you're gone? We don't explain anything. We live our lives and let people think whatever they want. My last day was March 24th. I cleaned out my desk in the morning, returned my security badge to HR, shook hands with people who'd been colleagues and might never speak to me again. Victoria had a board meeting scheduled conveniently timed so she wouldn't have to watch me leave. But as I walked to the elevator for the last time, I saw her through the conference room glass. She was presenting something, gesturing at a slide deck every inch the commanding CEO. She glanced toward the elevator bank just as the doors opened. Our eyes met across 50 feet of open office space. Then the doors closed and Apex Technologies disappeared from my life. The job search started optimistically. I had 3 years of solid experience, recommendations from previous employers, a track record of results. I updated my resume, reached out to my network, started applying to positions. Week 115, applications submitted. 2 automated rejections. The rest silence. Week 2, 10 more applications. 1 phone screen that went nowhere when they asked why I'd left Apex, and I couldn't give them a satisfactory answer without lying. Week 3, I started doing freelance accounting work for small businesses. Payroll processing, tax prep, basic bookkeeping. It paid the bills but felt like running backward. Victoria tried to help in ways that wouldn't be obvious. She'd mention my name to contacts in the industry, send anonymous recommendations to companies she knew were hiring. But finance was insular enough that people connected dots. Garrett Brennan left Apex Technologies abruptly after 3 years. Victoria Hayes promoted him 3 times in those 3 years. Draw your own conclusions. The conclusions people drew were rarely charitable. By mid-April, I'd applied to 30 positions, 15 immediate rejections, 10 never responded, 5 phone interviews that led nowhere. The savings account I'd built up supporting Holden was shrinking fast. I started waking up at 4 a.m., my mind racing through catastrophic scenarios, burning through savings, losing my apartment, having to ask Holden for money after spending 5 years making sure he never had to worry about finances. Victoria noticed. She'd come over after work and find me hunched over my laptop, obsessively refreshing job boards. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. Garrett, you can't keep doing this to yourself. It's been 6 weeks. Something will come through. What if it doesn't? What if I burned every bridge by being with you? Her face went pale. Is that what you think? That this was a mistake? No, God, no. I'm just scared. She pulled me away from the computer, made me sit on the couch, forced food into my hands that I couldn't taste. You are the smartest financial analyst I've ever worked with. Someone will recognize that. When after I've depleted my savings and defaulted on my rent, then move in with me. You're at my place half the time anyway. I can't live off you. That's not who I am. It's not living off me. It's two people in a relationship sharing expenses. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't be the guy who moved into his rich girlfriend's penthouse because he couldn't support himself. The optics alone would destroy whatever professional reputation I had left. Week 8 arrived with crushing sameness. More applications, more rejections, more freelance work that paid enough to cover bills but wouldn't sustain a future. Victoria had stopped mentioning the job search, sensing that every conversation about it drove me deeper into the hole I was digging. Then on a Wednesday in mid-May, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mr. Brennan, this is Catherine Morrison from Harrison Capital Group in Boston. We're a venture capital firm specializing in tech sector investments. Your name came up in our search for a senior vice president of finance. Would you be available for a preliminary conversation? My hand shook as I grabbed a pen. Yes, absolutely. When works for you. The preliminary conversation turned into a formal phone interview. That turned into a video call with the executive team. Then they flew me to Boston for an in-person interview at their offices overlooking the harbor. Harrison Capital occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in the Seaport District. The conference room where I met the partners had floor-to-ceiling windows with views of ships cutting through gray water. They asked intelligent questions about M&A strategy, portfolio risk assessment, due diligence processes. I answered drawing on everything I'd learned at Apex, translating complex concepts into actionable insights. The managing partner, a woman named Sarah Chen, walked me out after 2 hours of intensive questioning. We'd like to make you an offer, Mr. Brennan. Senior VP of Finance, $200,000 base salary plus equity participation. The position starts in 6 weeks, which gives you time to relocate. We'll cover moving expenses. The relief hit so hard I nearly staggered. I accept. Excellent. Our HR director will send the formal offer letter this afternoon. Welcome to Harrison Capital. I flew back to Boston that evening, took the T to my neighborhood walk to my apartment in a daze. Victoria was already there, letting herself in with the key I'd given her months ago. How did it go? They offered me the job. She screamed and threw her arms around me, and for the first time in 2 months, I felt like I could breathe properly. We celebrated with takeout and champagne she'd brought, just in case, talking until midnight about what this meant. That's when the relief started curdling into suspicion. How did they find me? I didn't apply to Harrison Capital. Victoria's expression shifted, became carefully neutral. They're a well-connected firm. They probably heard about you through the network. Victoria. What? How did they find me? She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the street below. I may have mentioned to a friend that you were available. Sarah Chen sits on the investment committee for one of my portfolio companies. We had coffee 2 weeks ago, and your name came up. The air left my lungs. You arranged this. I didn't arrange anything. I told Sarah you existed and that you were looking for opportunities. You got the one because of your interview, your qualifications, your talent. You went behind my back. I couldn't watch you destroy yourself. You were barely eating, barely sleeping, convinced you would never work again. I had the ability to help, and I used it. I wanted to be angry, wanted to feel betrayed by her interference. But underneath the knee-jerk reaction was something else: gratitude, and the uncomfortable realization that I'd needed the help. You should have told me. If I'd told you, you would have refused. Your pride would have gotten in the way. My pride is all I have left. No, you have me, you have Holden, you have a job offer that you earned through your own merit. I just made sure the right people knew you were available. I sat down heavily on the couch processing. Boston. The job is in Boston. 4 hours from here. You can't commute 4 hours each way. Victoria turned from the window, her expression unreadable. I've been thinking about that. Apex has the infrastructure for remote leadership. I've set up distributed teams, cloud-based collaboration systems, video conferencing capabilities. The board approved a new remote work policy last month for senior executives. You're planning to work remotely. I'm planning to move to Boston with you. The words hung between us, enormous and terrifying. We'd been together for 4 months. Most of that time had been stolen moments and careful distance. Moving in together meant going public, merging our lives completely, betting everything on us. That's insane. Probably. You'd give up being in Boston, leave your company headquarters, uproot your entire life. To be with you, ma'am, in a heartbeat. I crossed the room and kissed her hard and desperate, trying to pour everything I couldn't say into the contact. When we broke apart, we were both crying. We're really doing this. Unless you don't want to, I want to. God, I want to. We spent that night planning. Harrison Capital wanted me to start in 6 weeks, which gave us time to organize the move. Victoria would sell her penthouse, she'd been wanting to anyway. She said all those empty rooms and sterile furniture. I'd give notice on my month-to-month lease. We'd find a place in Boston big enough for both of us to have home offices. Telling Holden was easier than I expected. He drove down from Cambridge the following weekend, listened to our plans, and grinned. About time you two figured this out. Boston's perfect. I can actually visit without spending 4 hours on the road. My grandmother Jennifer called from California when she heard. At 75, she was still sharp as a tack, still running her book club and volunteering at the library. So you're moving in with this woman you've known for 4 months. I've known her for 3 years, Grandma. We've been dating for 4 months. And she's worth it. Worth upending your whole life. I looked at Victoria, who was pretending not to listen from the kitchen. More than worth it. Then I'm happy for you, sweetheart. Bring her to visit sometime. I want to meet the woman who finally got you to take a risk. Eleanor heard through her society connections. Somehow Victoria suspected one of the board members had loose lips at a cocktail party. The call came on a Saturday morning, Victoria's phone lighting up with her mother's contact information. You're throwing away your company for a man. Victoria put the call on speaker so I could hear. I'm choosing happiness over proximity to an office building. There's a difference. You'll regret this, Victoria. Mark my words. The only thing I regret is wasting 13 years caring what you thought. She ended the call before Eleanor could respond. We stared at the phone for a moment, then started laughing, the kind of hysterical laughter that comes from relief and defiance mixed together. Victoria's penthouse sold in 12 days for $4.2 million, bought by a tech executive who paid cash and barely negotiated. We spent a weekend packing Holden, helping us box up 3 years of accumulated possessions. By the end, Victoria's entire life fit into a moving truck and looked strangely small for someone who'd achieved so much. My lease ended on June 30th. We drove to Boston in convoy Victoria's Mercedes, leading me following in a rented U-Haul with our combined belongings. The brownstone we'd found in Back Bay had 3 bedrooms, original woodwork, and enough space for us to coexist without tripping over each other. The first week was chaos. Unpacking boxes, arguing about where furniture should go, discovering that Victoria had strong opinions about kitchen organization, while I didn't care as long as things were functional. Holden came over on Saturday and made jokes about his brother shacking up with a woman worth millions. If she leaves you, can I have the espresso machine? Not helpful, Holden. Just looking out for my inheritance. But underneath the teasing, I could see him relax. He'd been worried about me during the job search, calling twice a week to check in. Seeing me settled, employed, happy, it lifted something off his shoulders too. My first day at Harrison Capital was a Tuesday in mid-July. The office culture was different from Apex, less hierarchical, more collaborative. Sarah Chen introduced me around, walked me through ongoing deals, gave me autonomy to structure my approach. By the end of the first week, I knew I'd made the right choice. Victoria thrived in the remote arrangement. She'd fly back to the old city once a month for board meetings, stay 2 or 3 days handling in-person obligations, then return to Boston. The rest of the time, she worked from her home office, joining video calls and managing the company with an efficiency that surprised even her. I was micromanaging, she admitted one evening over dinner. Being in the office every day, I felt like I had to oversee everything. Now I focus on strategic decisions and trust my team to execute. The company's actually running better. 3 months into Boston life, on a random Tuesday evening, I came home from work and found her in her office completely focused on her laptop. She looked up when I appeared in the doorway, smiled without breaking concentration on whatever she was analyzing. Something about that smile, casual, comfortable, real, made my chest ache with certainty. I wanted this forever. Wanted to come home to her every day for the rest of my life. Wanted to build something permanent instead of just drifting along, hoping things worked out. The next day I went ring shopping during my lunch break. The jeweler in Copley Square showed me dozens of options, elaborate settings, vintage designs, modern minimalism. I chose a simple platinum band with a small round diamond, the kind of ring that wouldn't get in the way when she was typing or writing or gesturing during presentations. Classic, understated, perfect for someone who valued substance over flash. It cost more than I'd spent on anything in my life except my education. I put it on my credit card and tried not to think about the balance. For 2 weeks, I carried the ring in my jacket pocket, waiting for the right moment. A special dinner reservation, a weekend getaway, some romantic gesture that would make a good story later. But the right moment never came because I kept overthinking it. Then one Tuesday in late October, after a perfectly ordinary workday and a perfectly ordinary dinner, I watched Victoria load the dishwasher and realized there is no perfect moment. There's just the right person and the decision to ask. Victoria turned around. She did dish soap still on her hands and froze when she saw me kneeling on our kitchen floor. Her hands flew to her mouth, soapy fingers and all. 3 years ago, you hired me. Well, technically, you hired me. Let me start over. I took a breath, steadied myself. I spent 3 years watching you be brilliant and intimidating and completely untouchable. Then one Christmas night, I saw you vulnerable and real and everything I needed without knowing it. These past months in Boston have been the best of my life. I want every day after this to be with you. I want to build a life together, have kids someday, grow old arguing about where furniture should go. Victoria Hayes, will you marry me? She was crying before I finished talking, nodding so hard I almost laughed. Yes, yes, God, yes. I stood and she kissed me, and we both forgot about the ring for a minute until she pulled back and held out her hand, still shaking. The ring slid on perfectly, catching the kitchen light. How did you know my size? I guessed, must have gotten lucky. We stayed up all night talking about the future, a small wedding, just family and close friends. Nothing elaborate. Maybe next summer, maybe sooner. Kids eventually when the timing felt right. A life built on choice instead of circumstance. Holden called the next morning because news traveled fast when my grandmother got involved. She'd apparently called him at 6 a.m. Pacific time to share the excitement. Congratulations, you crazy person. You're really doing this. Really doing this. She makes you happy. Happier than I knew how to be. Then I'm glad. Mom and Dad would have liked her, I think. She's tough but fair, right? That's what Dad always said mattered most. The wedding planning took over our lives in small increments. Victoria wanted her old college roommate Jessica as maid of honor. They'd reconnected over email and rediscovered their friendship. I asked Holden to be my best man. We found a garden venue outside Boston that could hold 50 people, booked it for mid-January because we didn't want to wait. 6 weeks before the wedding, Eleanor called again. Victoria stared at her phone like it might bite her, then finally answered. The conversation lasted 20 minutes, Victoria's face cycling through anger, suspicion, and finally something that might have been cautious hope. She wants to come to the wedding. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. Part of me wants to tell her no, that she lost the right to these moments when she abandoned me. But another part, she trailed off, wants her to see what you've built, who you've become. I want her to know she was wrong, about me, about you, about everything she said I'd never have because I chose ambition over her version of appropriate. Then invite her. Give her a chance to see it. Eleanor Hayes arrived 2 days before the wedding, driving up from Connecticut in a town car with a driver. She stayed at the Four Seasons and requested a meeting at a neutral restaurant Victoria's choice of location, her insistence that I be present. We met her at a seafood place in the North End, the kind of old Italian joint where the waiters had been there 40 years and didn't care about your pedigree. Eleanor looked smaller somehow than she had at L'Espalier, less commanding. Age was catching up with her, or maybe it was the isolation finally taking its toll. Victoria, Mr. Brennan. Mother, we ordered. Eleanor made small talk about traffic and the weather, clearly uncomfortable. Finally, Victoria set down her menu and looked at her mother directly. Why did you want to come? Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. Because I was wrong about everything. I let pride and stubbornness cost me 13 years with my only daughter. I don't want to lose any more time. You realize I'm not going to suddenly become the daughter you wanted. I'm still running Apex. Still living with a man you think is beneath me. Still choosing my own path. I know, and I'm proud of you for it. Finally. The words hung in the air, fragile and unexpected. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You could have said that 13 years ago, when I needed to hear it. I was a fool. I let your father's family and their expectations matter more than my own daughter's happiness. When he died, when I realized he'd left you that money specifically because he was proud of what you'd built, it should have opened my eyes. But I was too stubborn, too angry. I'm sorry, Victoria, for all of it. The apology didn't erase 13 years of pain, but it cracked open a door that had been sealed shut, let in the possibility of something different. I can't promise we'll be close. I can't promise I'll forgive everything right away. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for a chance. Victoria looked at me. I squeezed her hand under the table, let her make the choice. Okay, a chance, but Mother, this is my life, my choices. You don't get a vote anymore. Understood. The wedding day dawned clear in cold January sunlight, turning the snow-covered garden into something magical. I stood at the altar with Holden beside me, watching guests file in and take their seats. My grandmother sat in the front row wearing a ridiculous hat with feathers that made Holden suppress a laugh. Eleanor sat 3 rows back, tissues already in her hand. Then the music started, and Jessica appeared, followed by Victoria. She wore a simple white dress, her hair styled in loose waves, and she looked more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. Every step brought her closer, and I felt my throat go tight with emotion. The officiant spoke about love and partnership and commitment. Then it was time for vows. I pulled out the note card I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. A year ago, I was going through life on autopilot, doing what needed to be done without thinking about what I wanted. Then one Christmas night, you let me see the real you, the person behind the CEO title, and I fell completely. I promised to choose you every day in big moments and small ones, to be your partner, your best friend, the person who always has your back, to build a life together that neither of us could have imagined alone. Victoria's vows made half the audience cry. I spent 20 years building a company while building walls around my heart. I convinced myself I couldn't have both success and love, that choosing one meant sacrificing the other. Then you refused to let me spend Christmas alone, saw past all my armor to the person underneath. I promised to love you fearlessly, to trust you completely, to create a home that feels nothing like the empty places I lived before. You are my home now. Sometimes a man isn't measured by what he has, but by what he's willing to sacrifice for the person he loves. The thought crossed my mind as the officiant pronounced us married, as I kissed my wife, while our friends and family applauded as Victoria's hand gripped mine like she'd never let go. The reception was intimate, full of laughter and dancing. Holden's best man speech was equal parts embarrassing and touching, talking about how I'd raised him and how Victoria had somehow made me happy enough to stop constantly worrying. Jessica spoke about knowing Victoria for 20 years and never seeing her like this, open, joyful, truly alive. Eleanor approached during dinner, her expression carefully neutral. Victoria, may I speak with you privately? They stepped away to the edge of the garden. I watched from a distance as Eleanor pulled something from her purse, an envelope old and yellowed. Victoria took it, read whatever was inside, then embraced her mother for the first time in 13 years. Later, Victoria showed me the envelope. Inside was a letter from her father written before he died and given to Eleanor with instructions to deliver it when the time was right. Victoria, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And your mother has finally found the courage to give you what I left for you, not just money, but something more important. My pride in everything you've accomplished. You were never the daughter I expected. You were so much more. Build your empire. Live your life. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. Love, Dad. We spent our wedding night at the Four Seasons too exhausted to do anything but collapse into bed and laugh about how we'd actually managed to pull off a wedding in 6 weeks. The next morning, we woke to fresh snow and room service breakfast and the quiet certainty that we'd made the right choice. 6 months later, on a Sunday morning in July, Victoria felt sick enough to take a pregnancy test. I was making coffee when she emerged from the bathroom, 3 positive tests lined up on the counter. We're going to be parents. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattered on the tile floor. Neither of us moved to clean it up. We just stood there staring at those 3 plastic sticks that would change everything. Holden bought us a onesie that said, "Future Architect," because of course he did. My grandmother sent a package of hand-knitted baby clothes that arrived so fast she must have started the moment we called. Eleanor came to visit, brought gifts, asked careful questions about how Victoria was feeling and whether we needed anything. The pregnancy was hard. Victoria worked through morning sickness until her doctor insisted she slow down. Board meetings moved to video calls permanently. She struggled with the loss of control, with her body changing in ways she couldn't manage or predict. I went to every appointment, watched every ultrasound, felt the baby kick for the first time, and cried in the doctor's office because it suddenly felt real in a way it hadn't before. We painted the nursery together on weekends, argued about colors and furniture, the same way we argued about everything passionately, stubbornly, always reaching compromise eventually. Christmas night came around again 1 year since everything had started. Victoria was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, her feet swollen. We stayed home instead of going anywhere, ordered takeout, sat on our couch with her feet in my lap while I rubbed them. Remember last year when you found me at Murphy's bar? I remember thinking you looked destroyed and also somehow still intimidating. I was destroyed, completely lost. I thought that was what success looked like, being powerful and alone. What does success look like now? She put her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. This, coming home to someone who knows all my flaws and loves me anyway. Building something that can't be measured in profit margins. You taught me the difference between existing and living. The baby Claire Victoria Brennan was born on a February morning during a snowstorm that shut down half of Boston. We made it to the hospital with 20 minutes to spare before Victoria's water broke in the parking lot. The delivery was complicated. The cord wrapped around Claire's neck, her heart rate dropping dangerously. Doctors rushed in, monitors screaming, Victoria squeezing my hand hard enough to bruise while they prepped for an emergency intervention. For 3 minutes, I thought I might lose them both. 3 minutes of watching monitors and doctors moving with urgent efficiency and Victoria pale and scared on the bed. 3 minutes of bargaining with whatever God might be listening, promising anything if they'd both just be okay. Then Claire was born, screaming, pink and healthy and perfect. The relief hit so hard, I actually staggered, had to grab the bed rail to stay upright. The doctors checked her over, cleared her airway, pronounced her healthy despite the scare. Victoria held our daughter and I cried, and we were both complete disasters while the nurses tactfully gave us privacy. Eleanor drove 4 hours through snow to meet her granddaughter. She held Claire with surprising gentleness, tears streaming down her face. "She looks like you did as a baby. Same eyes, same serious expression." My grandmother flew in from California the next day, swept into the hospital room like a force of nature, and immediately started telling Claire stories about her father as a child. Holden showed up with flowers and terrible dad jokes, held his niece with extreme care, looked at me like he couldn't quite believe we'd made it here. Mom and Dad would have loved her. Yeah, they would have. That night, after everyone had left and visiting hours were over, I sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair next to Victoria's bed and watched our daughter sleep in her bassinet. She was so small, so fragile, so completely dependent on us to keep her safe. Victoria reached for my hand. "What are you thinking?" That 1.5 years ago, I was sitting alone in my apartment, eating ramen, and wondering if I'd always be alone. Now I have you and Claire and a life I couldn't have imagined if I'd tried. Sometimes the best stories start with the messiest moments, with walking someone home who's too drunk to walk straight, with making pancakes for your boss the morning after Christmas, with choosing each other when it would have been easier to walk away. Family isn't about blood, It's about who stays when everything goes to hell. She smiled. You've said that before. It's still true, maybe more true now. Claire made a small sound in her sleep, one tiny hand opening and closing. Victoria pulled me onto the bed beside her, both of us, watching our daughter in the dim hospital light. Your father saved me by refusing to let me be alone, Victoria whispered to Claire, and now none of us will ever be alone again. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city was buried in white quiet and clean and full of possibility. Inside our hospital room, our small family slept tangled together, warm and safe and whole. Morning would bring discharge papers and car seat struggles, and the terrifying reality of being responsible for another human life. But right now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. We'd survived the scandal and the job loss and the move and the complications. We'd built something real from the wreckage of two lonely lives. I looked at my wife and my daughter and thought about that Christmas night in the bar, about the choice to stay instead of walking away, about every decision since that had led us here, about how sometimes the right path looks like disaster from the outside, but feels like coming home from the inside. The future stretched ahead, messy and uncertain and beautiful. We'd face it together, the three of us, and that was all that mattered.